Cross arrived at work early, just as the first rays of the morning sun began to cast a golden glow on the rooftops of the sleeping houses. The city, wrapped in a light morning mist, was slowly coming to life. The hallways of the police station were empty and silent, except for the creaking floorboards under the heavy boots of the duty officer, a quiet reminder that Cross wasn't completely alone. He poured himself a strong cup of coffee, letting its aroma fill the empty room, then sat down at his desk. The picture forming in his mind was far from complete. Petty thief Clifford Brooks had broken into Eleanor Chesser's home, robbed her, and maybe even killed her by throwing her off the balcony. But what about the Trace's expensive, narrowed-to-dress shoes found at the crime scene? They sure as hell didn't belong to Brooks. And the biggest question, why didn't the killer take the watch? An expensive piece, something any thief would have been tempted by. Cross had the nagging feeling that someone was deliberately steering the investigation in the wrong direction. And who the hell had shot at him? Did that mean he was on the right track, even though so far there wasn't a track to follow? And who was that red-haired woman, the one who'd raced across the tracks just ahead of the train? His thoughts jumped to Frederick Larson, the only suspect. But he had an alibi. Someone had planted those gloves on him, but why? And how had Larson's business card ended up on Miss Chesser's kitchen floor after the search? Was someone trying to frame him? Or was Larson actually the killer? After all, he could have slipped away from the club for a bit, committed the murder, and come right back. It was only a 15-minute walk from the club to Chesser's house. But did he even have a motive? Eleanor's house held no money, no valuable documents. The phone rang. "Sir, you asked to be notified if a blue Plymouth with a 0 and a 5 in the plate popped up anywhere. Sergeant Martinez spotted one this morning. It sped past him on his way to work." "Which way was it headed?" "It's parked outside the Baccarat Club, sir." Cross shot up from his chair and rushed out the door. Within a minute, he was tearing down the road in his Buick, heading straight for the club. Cross kept his eyes on the road, wondering what business anyone could have at a card club at 7 in the morning. The Baccarat Club sat in a quiet neighborhood, surrounded by small houses with neatly trimmed front yards. Stopping a block away, he approached the building cautiously. The blue Plymouth was still parked out front. He gave the front doors a quick pull, locked as expected. Moving around to the back, he tried the service entrance. This time, the doors swung open. The crumbling basement steps were covered in a thick layer of dust. Clear boot prints etched into it led the captain quietly into the darkness. "Just like a cheap novel," he muttered, flicking his lighter on. Ahead of him, a narrow hallway stretched into darkness, ending at another metal door. Cross had taken no more than 20 steps when a gunshot rang out from the direction of the door. He ducked behind the corner and fired back. At that moment, the door he'd come through let out a slow, painful creak, then slammed shut behind him. Cross lunged for the door, but someone had already jammed a metal bar into the hinges, locking it from the outside. He spun around and sprinted in the other direction, kicking doors open at random, hoping for an exit. At last, he burst into the main hall. The dim lighting from the wall sconces cast long shadows over the room. In the middle stood a terrified young man, barely in his 20s. "Where is he?" Cross barked. Who?" the guy stammered. "The one who came in the blue Plymouth." Cross forced himself to stay calm. The kid looked like he might pass out from fear. "Sir, I don't know. Some guy showed up this morning to pick up his drunk friend. The guy lost big at cards last night and spent the whole morning clinging to a glass. This morning, we put him in the back room so he could sleep it off. About 15 minutes ago, his friend showed up, dragged him to the car, and they just took off. Cross clenched his jaw. The damn Plymouth had slipped through his fingers again. Do you know these men? The guy who lost at cards? That's Mr. Larson. He's a regular here, but the other guy? No idea. What did he look like? White male, around 40, though maybe younger. Hard to tell, he looked pretty rough. Anything else? Messy hair, wrinkled clothes, about a week's worth of stubble. That's all I got, sorry, man. Cross let out a frustrated sigh. Another dead end. Back at the station, he spent the rest of the day running the plates. Nothing. The numbers didn't exist. By evening, though, his thoughts had shifted. He was looking forward to tonight. Things with Evelyn had been growing deeper, and she felt the same way. Tonight, for the first time, she had invited him over. On the way, Cross picked up a bouquet, then gunned the engine, racing toward Evelyn's house. Pulling into the driveway, he frowned. Evelyn wasn't waiting on the porch like she usually did. A flicker of unease settled in his chest. Cross stepped inside quietly. From the kitchen, the warm scent of roasted meat filled the air. "Evelyn?" he called. Silence. In the living room, a table was set for two. She had been expecting him. His hand instinctively went to his holster. Gun drawn, he moved through the house, checking each room. Empty. Then, in the darkness, he nearly walked into a door leading to the basement. Flicking his lighter on, he stepped inside. The small mirror hanging on the wall barely reflected his figure in the dim light. The dim glow illuminated a figure tied to a chair. Evelyn. Her head hung forward, her mouth sealed shut with tape. She wasn't moving. For a split second, the sight of her, so vulnerable, so helpless, froze him in place. And that moment of hesitation had almost cost him his life. Suddenly, a sharp pain exploded in the back of Cross's head. Evelyn's image blurred, the light in his eyes faded, and he collapsed to the floor like a felled tree. A few minutes later, two figures slipped out of Evelyn's house, got into the blue Plymouth, and sped off into the night. Cross was the first to come to. His head was pounding like hell. Gritting his teeth, he fumbled for his lighter and flicked it on. Evelyn was still there, tied to the chair, unmoving. Pushing through the pain, he crawled over to her on his knees, hands shaking as he worked to untie the ropes. Dragging her into the living room, he laid her gently on the couch and reached for the phone. Anger burned through him, at himself. He couldn't decide what hurt more, his head or his pride. How the hell had he let this happen? Evelyn let out a soft breath. Then slowly her eyes fluttered open, and she smiled at him.